All it took was one spray of the perfume, and Bidemi realized that some gifts are better left unopened. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful woman who lived and worked in the big city. Her name was Bidemi, and she was greatly loved by those around her. Her smile lit up rooms, and her laughter was so infectious. One day, Bidemi returned home from work and met a gift sitting outside her door. She picked it up and wondered who could have sent it. She walked into her house, scanning through the package to see if there was a note attached with a name, but all she found was a simple card that read, "May the aura of this perfume bring you the attention that you deserve." The perfume bottle was unique, a crystal glass with a golden nozzle that shimmered under her warm bedroom light. Bidemi smiled, assuming it was from a secret admirer or a client who was only expressing gratitude. Curiosity got the better part of her, and without hesitation, she pressed the nozzle and sprayed it lightly on her neck. The fragrance was divine at first, a sweet blend of jasmine and sandalwood. Bidemi inhaled deeply, savoring the scent, but then her nose twitched and her eyes began to water slightly. Something felt off, but Bidemi brushed it off as stress. She dropped the perfume on her dresser and got herself ready for bed, knowing how busy her morning was going to be. When morning came, Bidemi woke up feeling odd. There was a terrible smell in her room, and she could not help but ask herself where the smell was coming from. As she walked into the bathroom to freshen up, the smell heightened, and Bidemi realized that it was coming from her. Did I poop on myself or something? She thought to herself as she took a long bath, scrubbing herself until her skin hurt. But the smell persisted, foul and pungent, like stagnant water mixed with rotten eggs. When she arrived at work, her colleagues could not help but notice the horrible smell. "Is there a dead rat somewhere?" someone whispered, as another revealed that it smelt like sewage. Bidemi recalled in her chair as she pondered on why she was smelling. Her colleague approached her, holding her nose softly. "Bidemi, I think something might be wrong. Oh. Should we not go see a doctor?" she said to Bidemi, whose eyes brimmed with embarrassment. Feeling so humiliated, Bidemi rushed home to take another bath. No matter how many baths she took or how many expensive perfumes she sprayed on her skin, the smell only grew worse as it clung to her like a shadow. That evening, as she sat at home crying, her boyfriend Mide decided to pay her a visit. They had been dating for a year, and Bidemi hoped that he would provide some form of comfort to her. But as soon as he entered her apartment, he gagged and covered his nose. "Bidemi, what's that smell?" "Mide, please, I don't know what's happening to me." Mide stepped back as his face twisted in disgust. "You smell like a dead corpse. What did you do to smell this terribly?" he asked Bidemi, who stood there heartbroken to hear such hurtful words from him. Mide could not hide his discomfort. He held his nose tightly, gagging as he tried not to vomit. Bidemi pleaded with him not to go, but Mide warned her to stay away from him. "Until you fix yourself, I don't want to see you anywhere around me," Mide said as he walked out of her house, leaving her alone with her shame. Bidemi could not contain her hurt. She called her best friend Tola, who arrived at home a few hours later. Tola met Bidemi broken and in tears. She assured Bidemi that everything would be fine. However, she could not help but notice the stench that came from her friend. "When did this all begin?" Tola asked Bidemi, who narrated everything to her. She pointed at the perfume, which was still sitting on her dresser. "I believe the perfume is behind everything that is happening," Bidemi said to her friend Tola, who walked towards the dresser and picked up the perfume bottle. She stared at it for a brief moment and smashed it to the ground. The contents evaporated before their eyes as Tola stared at the shattered remains on the floor. The golden shards glittered under the faint light, but the foul stench in the air remained as thick and suffocating as ever. "It's gone now, Bidemi," Tola said softly, turning back to her friend. Whatever curse was in that bottle should be broken by now. But Bidemi could still smell it. It clung to her skin, her hair, and her very soul. Tola, what if it's not just the perfume? What if it's me? Bidemi's voice broke as tears ran down her cheeks. Tola hugged her tightly, though she flinched slightly as the smell assaulted her senses. No, Bidemi, it's not you. We'll figure this out together, okay? You're not alone. That night, Tola stayed with Bidemi. They barely slept as Bidemi cried herself into exhaustion. Later that night, Bidemi woke up to a faint sound of Tola talking to someone on the phone. I'm so happy it worked, Tola whispered on the phone as she thanked the unknown person for coming up with such a great plan. Bidemi stood there shocked as she wondered what Tola was talking about. She returned to her bed and pretended to be asleep, her heart pounding in her chest as Tola stood silently in the doorway. Bidemi could swear that she saw something cold and calculating in her friend's eyes. She squeezed her eyes shut, her mind racing with questions that she had no answers to. What did she mean by I'm happy it worked? Who was she talking to? Could Tola have done this to me? Bidemi thought to herself deeply as she was unable to sleep. By morning, she heard Tola leave the house in a hurry, and this heightened her suspicion as she wondered why Tola was acting so strangely. Hours passed, and Bidemi could not take her mind off the call. She sat in her living room alone, her mind swelling with thoughts as she heard a knock on her door. Bidemi wondered who it could be. With trembling hands, she opened the door and saw Yemi, who was standing there with a smile on his face. Yemi was a man from her past, who had always been kind to her. For years, he had expressed his love for her, but Bidemi had never felt the same way about him. Still, they remained friends before life pulled them in different directions. Bidemi had not seen Yemi in 2 years and was shocked to see him at her door. Yemi's face was a mix of concern and shock as he stepped into the house. The stench hit him immediately as he tried to hold his breath. Bidemi, what happened here? What is that smell? He asked Bidemi, who burst out in tears in front of him. Yemi could not stand to see her cry. He urged her to narrate the entire story to him, and Bidemi began to narrate all that happened. Yemi sat beside her, ignoring the stench as he listened to her heart-touching story. Through choking sobs, Bidemi told him everything about the perfume, the unbearable smell, Mide's hurtful words, and how her life had crumbled in mere weeks. When she mentioned Tola, her voice wavered. Yemi, I think Tola knows something. I think she did something to me. Yemi frowned, his brows knitting together. Tola, your best friend? Why would she do something like this? I don't know, Yemi, but last night I heard her on the phone. She said I'm so happy it worked, and when she thought I was asleep, she stood over me just staring, like she was watching me suffer. Yemi stayed silent for a moment before speaking firmly. Bidemi, I would advise you not to jump into conclusions until you are really sure. Tola is your best friend, and you don't want to do anything to jeopardize your friendship if you end up being wrong, he said to Bidemi, who nodded her head in agreement. The days that followed were filled with more suspicions as Bidemi could not help but question Tola's actions on the day that she saw the perfume. The way she smashed the bottle to the ground without inspecting it or suggesting that they analyze its content felt rushed, as if she was trying to destroy evidence. That evening, as Bidemi sat with Tola in the living room, Tola said something that raised her suspicions. Sometimes, we have to lose everything to see who really cares about us. The way she said it sent chills down Bidemi's spine, as though she was finally admitting to something. Bidemi could not hold back any longer. She confronted Tola, accusing her of being behind all that was happening. Tola, enough. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when I know something isn't right. You've been acting so suspiciously, and I can't ignore it anymore. Tola raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. Bidemi, what are you talking about? You smashed the perfume without inspecting it, and you have been acting so strangely. The other night, you told someone that you are happy it worked, and then there's the way you look at me sometimes, like you enjoy seeing me suffer. Are you behind this, Tola? Are you the reason my life has fallen apart? Tola could not believe her ears. For a moment, the two friends stared at each other in silence as Tola's lips curled into a bitter smile. After everything I've done for you dare accuse me of this? I've been there for you, Bidemi. While everyone left, while Mide walked away, while your life crumbled, I stayed. And this is how you repay me? Staying doesn't mean innocence, Tola. Bidemi shot back without remorse. Tola's face twisted with fury as she grabbed her purse and began to walk away. I won't stand here and let you accuse me of such evil. You've changed, Bidemi. You're not the friend I used to know, she said as she stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. Yemi arrived shortly after Tola had left. He found Bidemi curled up on her couch in tears. She's gone, Yemi. She didn't deny it. She just walked away. Yemi sat beside her as he began to comfort her. Sometimes, silence is an admission of guilt, Bidemi. But we'll get to the bottom of this. You're not alone in this fight. For the next few weeks, Yemi stayed by Bidemi's side. They visited doctors, herbalists, and even traditional healers, but no cure worked. Each day, Bidemi grew weaker, not just from the smell, but from the emotional weight of her suffering. Finally, Yemi informed Bidemi of a powerful prophet who his friend had recommended to him. He called him on the phone, and the prophet agreed to visit her in her home. When he arrived, he revealed to her that she was cursed. You carry a curse, my child, a curse placed by someone who is so close to you, a friend who envies you and desires to see you broken. Bidemi's voice shook as she asked if it was Tola. The prophet nodded solemnly. Yes, your friend, who you trusted the most, is the cause of your suffering, but her curse is not permanent, he said as he handed her a substance to drink. Bidemi drank the liquid and began to feel a burning sensation in her body. It burned as it went down, and her entire body felt like it was on fire. Bidemi screamed as her skin felt like it was being peeled away. Then suddenly it stopped. The air around her felt clean. Bidemi took a deep breath, and for the first time in weeks, there was no stench. Yemi is gone. The smell is gone, she said excitedly, as Yemi pulled her into an embrace, his voice trembling with relief. The stench was gone, and Bidemi could not contain her joy. In the weeks that followed, Bidemi's life slowly returned to normal. Her smile came back, her skin glowed again, and she started to feel alive. Yemi remained by her side, his devotion unwavering. Their friendship blossomed into love, and Yemi asked her to marry him. Bidemi, without thinking twice, agreed, and Yemi was so delighted. My mom is around, and I would like you to meet her, he said to Bidemi, who followed him home to meet his mother. They had dinner together, and Bidemi was able to win his mother's heart. After dinner, Yemi pleaded with Bidemi to wait in the living room whilst he has a word with his mother. She sat there alone as she waited for him to return. Bidemi tried to reach for the television remote, which had fallen to the side of the sofa. She put her hand in to get it out when she saw a piece of rumpled paper by the sofa. Bidemi opened the paper and froze in shock to realize that it was the receipt of the evil perfume, the same perfume that almost ruined her life. Yemi was the one who gifted her the perfume and not her best friend Tola, who she had accused of being behind it all. Just as she stood there frozen, Yemi walked into the room and saw the receipt in her hands. He froze in the doorway, his eyes locking onto the crumpled receipt in Bidemi's hands. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still as they both stared at each other. Yemi, you bought the perfume? You did this to me? Bidemi's voice cracked, her lips trembling as tears pooled in her eyes. Yemi sighed heavily, rubbing his face with both hands before slowly walking towards her. Bidemi, I can explain. Explain? She snapped, her voice rising. Explain how you cursed me? Explain how you stood by me while I suffered? How you watched me fall apart while pretending to care? Yemi's shoulders slumped as his face twisted with guilt. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Bidemi. I just wanted you to see me, to need me. To need you? You destroyed me, Yemi. You watched me lose everything. My job, my relationship, my dignity, and you pretended to save me? Why, Yemi? Why would you do this? Yemi stood across from her, his hands shaking as he spoke. Because I loved you, Bidemi. For years, I loved you, but you never seemed to reciprocate my love. I was always the good friend, the safe choice, the man who you never considered. So one day, a thought ran through my mind that if I make you vulnerable, maybe you might finally see me and love me the way I love you. I visited the prophet, who told me to bring a bottle of perfume. I did as he instructed and watched him do some incantations on it. He promised me that he had the remedy, so I planted the gift at your doorstep, hoping that my plan would work. When everything played out the way that I wanted, I invited the prophet back to your home to give you the remedy. Bidemi, all I did was because I love you so much. Yemi said to Bidemi, whose tears fell freely as she staggered backwards, clutching the receipt in her hand. You were supposed to be my friend, Yemi. You were supposed to help me, but instead you broke me. You let me believe that Tola, my best friend, was the villain. You let me carry that hatred in my heart for this long. Yemi stood there, his hands reaching towards her. Bidemi, please. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. I thought I could fix it before it went too far. No, Yemi. She caught him sharply. You don't get to ask for forgiveness. You don't get to act like this was a mistake when you planned it all. I trusted you, Yemi, she whispered as she turned and began to leave. I want you out of my life, Yemi. Don't call me. Don't look for me. And don't ever come near me in your life again, she said as she walked out of the door. In the days that followed, Bidemi focused on healing. She reached out to her best friend Tola, apologizing for all the horrible things that she said to her. Tola hugged her tightly. You were hurt, Bidemi. You were desperate for answers. I forgive you, and I'm just glad that you're okay. Bidemi and Tola hugged themselves tightly as Tola finally revealed who she was talking to that night. It was her brother, who was planning a surprise birthday party for their mother. That night was her mother's birthday, and Tola chose to stay with Bidemi instead. Seeing how distressed she was, Tola's brother had called to tell her that their plan had worked, and Tola was so delighted to hear the news. Bidemi felt so stupid jumping into conclusions. She apologized once again, and Tola forgave her with a smile. That was how Tola and Bidemi mended their broken friendship, and slowly, Bidemi began to rebuild her life again. She found a new job, reconnected with old friends, and learned the bitter lesson that some gifts are better left unopened. The lesson to be learned from this story is that the heart of man is wicked. We should be careful of the people we let into our lives and the gifts that we accept from people, as not all gifts are given with good intentions. Last but not least, true love doesn't seek to control, manipulate, or break someone down. Rather, it builds, supports, and heals. I hope you enjoyed the story.